Just Baseball Show. We're going to give you 20 relievers, the top 20 relievers in Major League Baseball for the 2025 MLB season. We're going to go a little bit quicker through relievers because it's kind of the same conversation with all of them. It's like, oh, this guy's nasty. He's
I was going to say, just call it the "This Guy's Nasty" episode, and that would be it. It'd be saying the same things. Fastball, slider, gross.
Right. They're all awesome. And, this guy has a changeup, but it's also nasty. So we're going to do the top 20 relievers. We're going to go at a little quicker pace than we typically do. I've got a fun last word that I think is reliever adjacent. And we got to talk about Alex Bregman signing with the Boston Red Sox and former Red Sox or Red Sox, if you're like a total grammar snob like that, which is super weird. Shouldn't it just be a Red Sox? Nick Pivetta signed with the San Diego Padres. We're going to get into all that. It's the Just Baseball Show for Monday, February 17th. As always, it is presented by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks, but also the sportsbook born in Vegas, which is a sick new slogan. How are you? Good?
I'm good. How are you? You're the one road tripping through what now? It would be the South. It would be, or now you're through there. You're through the South, Georgia.
I'm in Macon, Georgia. This sucks. I don't wish this on anybody, to be totally honest with you. I did 5 hours. I did like Milwaukee to Chicago and then Chicago to Indy just to go through a bunch of stuff on Saturday. And then I got up, hit the road at 6:30 a.m. on Sunday. And it should typically take you about an hour 40 to get from Indianapolis to Louisville. I woke up to 4 inches of snow piled up on my car. And naturally, the highways were not taken care of. So it took me like 3:15 to do what typically is an hour 40. So 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the road. And at 6:27, we're talking relievers. I'm in.
Hey, well, you are heading to a place where you don't have to worry about that at all. So at least the bright side is not only you're heading to, the dream job opportunity here, you're also heading to somewhere where there's no snow. It's actually been pretty hot down here. I'll be honest. Nice. So that part has been nice, but also real quick before we start, the South, where does that technically cut off? Because it's weird. Like Florida is not really the South. Where do you cut the South off at?
So I think bottom half of Kentucky starts the South. So as soon as you get south of Louisville, I think that's probably the South. Like Bowling Green, Kentucky, I consider the South. And I think you get to like Gainesville. And I think that's probably where it cuts
the Panhandle's the South. I've been there. I think that's the South. So yeah, right till about Gainesville, and then you cut that off.
So is Daytona the South? Because then you get to like Daytona and is it Ocala? Like that's tough, but then Orlando is Florida. It's not the South
anymore. Yeah, that's not the South. That definitely has to cut off there. This is one of those things that I forget that we talked about at the top of the episode, and then the YouTube comments are like 80% that from people that have like very, very passionate opinions about it. Like, how do you not know that it cuts off at I don't even know, Pensacola?
It's not the state line. Like it can't be the Florida state line. I think you got to get deeper into it. I think Gainesville should be the cutoff right there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the YouTube comments. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opinions on that.
It's going to be great. It's going to be civil, and it'll be awesome. Should we talk about Alex Bregman going to Boston? Alex Bregman on what is technically a 3 for 120. I'm not sure if you have the details in front of you, but there are player options after both years, effectively. It could turn into 1 for 40, and I've got thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a lot of money for one, but I like it a lot for them because I think it fits what they want to do here. There is a world where Bregman struggles and then he opts in and the Red Sox are kind of, tied up there. I don't care. We've been begging the Red Sox to make their splash. They were flexing their muscles all off season before, saying, oh, we're going to spend money. We have the opportunity to spend money here. We're going to do it. And we're kind of waiting. They made the big splash with Crochet, but we're waiting for them to really spend. And here they are. So I'm not going to criticize them for doing it. Also, a lot of the money is deferred. Whoa, isn't that crazy? Another team gets in on this. I love it because we talk about like prospects and Christian Campbell and the other guys that could potentially fill in, Avon Grissom. You're hoping you're praying that Christian Campbell gives you anything close to what Alex Bregman even did last year, let alone what he could possibly do in this ballpark, this coming season, right? Like, I think people, and we're all guilty of this, like we get so excited about prospects, we forget that you're dreaming on them having years as good as the average year of some of these established studs in Major League Baseball. And this was a move for the Red Sox that I think says we're going to try to make a run at this thing now, even if Bregman plays out of his mind like we think he might here. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more, in a moment. And he's gone after a year. We want to give this a shot now. And if he's gone, then we got Christian Campbell to take over right after that. And it seems like they're still going to try to fit in at bats. And they have even been non-committal about where Bregman's going to play, which is interesting to me because it's either move Devers, who you already promised was not going to play anywhere other than third base, move him off of that position, or really put him at second. I don't know where else you could put Alex Bregman. So that whole wrinkle, and it's interesting. But for the money side of it, just to hash out that part of the deal and that conversation here, $40 million for 2025. And then it's the opt-out that's possible for 2026, which is a $40 million option there. And then another player option in 2027 as well.
So it's a lot of money. And I think that's probably the conversation that we want to have around the money. It's a $40 million a year contract that Alex Bregman was just given by the Boston Red Sox. And is Alex Bregman a really good player? Yes. Is he a $40 million player? And I understand the allure of a Soto contract is that you're paying him much more total money over a much longer period of time. But at the end of the day, it's hard for me to sit here and look at Alex Bregman as a higher paid player in 2025 than Juan Soto. And again, I understand that it's nuanced and it's not how it works, but it's just like the idea of it in general is kind of crazy to me that Bregman is one of the highest paid position players of all time at this point. But he just hit the market at the right point. We've had that cornerback conversation.
Also, the price to pay for a guy that was very set on a long-term deal, right? Like how many times did we hear that he wants a long-term deal? He's not going to do short-term. He's not going to do short-term. And I don't think that was posturing. I really do think that was, I want to guarantee myself, $150+ million, $200 million, retirement contract essentially. And when it became clear that it wasn't quite going to get to that number, I think Alex Bregman said, you know what? Let me go play a year in a stadium where, by the way, in 21 games at Fenway Park, he has slashed 375, 490, 750 with 7 home runs and 9 doubles. Let me go there where I know I can hit. I know that the monster fits me perfectly. Have a great year, and then go get that bag later on. And here's the thing. If he signed that long-term deal, he wouldn't be getting 40 this year. Right. So with the deferrals as well, like he's going to get a lot of money up front here, but then also he's going to sign a mega deal potentially after this year with deferral money also coming in on top of that. And he's going to be bathing in it for the next 8-10 years if it works out the way that he wants. If it doesn't, it's still a 3-year deal at 120 where, okay, I'm struggling and I'm aging. Shoot. Well, I guaranteed myself 120. So I think it's a great situation for Bregman, but I also think it's a good spot for the Red Sox too, because yes, you are taking the risk that in the worst case scenario, he's not playing great. And then he's opting into 40 and 40 and kind of holding you hostage to a degree, but it is a large portion deferred. So it still gives the Red Sox the ability to operate. And you know what? They should be taking on these chances. Like they can afford to deal with an unfortunate contract situation if it goes there. I don't see it happening that way. He's too darn solid that I just don't see it being a disaster. It would have to be health issues, which hasn't really been much of a thing for him, knock on wood, like a Trevor Story. I think it ultimately is a great fit for them, as much as it is weird to see that 4-0, in a single year deal. But the present day value does come down a good bit.
It's funny because I'm with you on Bregman's on-field performance. Like, okay, worst case scenario, he's Carlos Santana and he's giving you a 110, 115 WRC plus, and he's walking as much as he's striking out, and he's going to pepper the monster enough, like just not as much as he would if he was peak Bregman. In terms of the offensive fit, in terms of the ballpark, and in terms of the lineup, the jigsaw puzzle gets really interesting with Boston, but I close my eyes and I see a great season for Bregman looking very similar to Xander Bogaerts' best years in that ballpark, where he's among the league leaders in doubles and he can pop 25 homers in a given season. Yeah. I like, obviously the defensive value is there to the level that I think Bogaerts' was as well, But I do see that offensive profile being very similar to what we saw from Xander Bogaerts, and Boston was pissed when he walked and when he went to San Diego. So you should be happy to get that type of player in your lineup again.
And I think also the big reason why he left and they weren't able to retain him is because San Diego was willing to give him a 20 million or a 20-year deal essentially. So that's not what you want to do, right? So I agree. Like I think it's going to look a lot like the good Bogaerts years if he's playing the way that he has been able to play and has consistently played, and the way that he wore out the Crawford boxes, I think it can work out to his favor even more, whether it's via home run or a shit ton of doubles. I think if they put him at second base, he's going to grade out great there. I think for the best foot forward, Red Sox wise, it would be putting Bregman at third. And imagine how much you're making up there in defensive value from what you had with Devers to now what you're getting defensively from a Bregman. Right. I don't know if they're going to do that, especially after promising him. Maybe, that's a conversation that changes when, you bring in an all-star and a guy that's played at, borderline MVP level in the past. I think if you're a team guy, you start to say, okay, maybe I can shift over, especially with Bregman just being so good defensively. I'm very interested to see how that all, shakes out. I do think it's interesting that Jeff Passan reported he's going to play second base. And then the Red Sox say, oh, we're going to wait and see here. I probably lean towards Passan probably having an inside track on what they're most likely going to do. And him at second base, I'm sure will grade out quite well also. And you think about the power that infield could have if Story's healthy and you have Casas at first with Devers at third and then, second baseman there that can pop 30 home runs for you. I know he hasn't done it in several years, but he's 25 home runs and 26 home runs the last 2 years. I think at Fenway, he could very easily push towards 30 or compensate for that with a ton of doubles. I'm really excited to see how it shakes out. And I think this was an excellent move for the Red Sox, who needed a right-handed bat. Again,
for sure,
their right-handed bat was going to be potentially Christian Campbell. And this isn't because I'm lower on him than everybody else. He's still a top 50 prospect for us. Like, it's because banking on a prospect is never a way to go when you're trying to win the World Series. And to me, this said, whether you think they're going to do it or not, we're trying to win the World Series. And I love that out of Boston because it's a joke that it hasn't been that way for the last couple of years. And I'm glad it finally is because they're the Boston freaking Red Sox.
At least win a division, even if it's not World Series. Like, we want to contend in the American League East, and you put yourself in a better position to do that with Alex Bregman playing every day as opposed to Christian Campbell playing in his first year of Major League Baseball every day. Now, I did see several reports that Boston is still trying to figure out a way to create an open lane to Christian Campbell making the opening day roster. And that opens up like this puzzle that I want to walk through with you. And it's a yes or no question to like even kickstart this conversation. Is there a trade here in the next month? Like the clear-cut guys that I feel like could be on the move, Wilyer or Abreu, but that feels more like a Roman Anthony pathway. The other one is Yoshida. Like, that's kind of the clear-cut one. If they can clear Yoshida, then you could have Casas and Devers do the DH thing. And the real wrinkle in this is the promise to Devers. It feels silly to do that for him. But if they can clear up Yoshida, I feel like you could revisit the first base conversation with Devers, and then you could have Casas DH, and that creates the opening for Bregman at third and Campbell at second, and all is fine in Boston land.
Even if you can't fully move Yoshida, I think that's the area where it's like that DH spot opens up so much more fluidity to how you can mix and match. And Cora is going to want to be creative with it. Like, if you have the DH spot open, as you mentioned, you can run Casas through there and then move, a Devers to first base. You could also just, as you said, like give Devers those days off and put him at the DH spot. And then those are the days that Bregman can play third and Campbell's playing second, especially when you're facing a left-handed pitcher. Cora loves his splits, but like this is still a pretty left-handed heavy lineup. So being able to add in another righty there through that DH spot, I think would be super beneficial. I think the Red Sox, though, they're in a tough spot because Yoshida's not bad, right? Like he ran a 115 WRC plus this past year. I think because of the contract, it feels like he's worse than he is, but the defensive value is just not there, right? He's brutal in the outfield. So you want him to play so that he can maybe play well enough that you can move him. But also, I think if you're just trying to win now, you might just have to eat it and have him be one of the best, one of the better platoon bats that you got and start to cut into his playing time if you really want to prioritize Christian Campbell getting reps now. And I think to do that, you've got to clear that DH spot. To your point, the thing that also works, I think, is Campbell is pretty versatile, right? Like, not in the way that he is good at a lot of spots, but I think the reason why he's versatile is he wasn't really great anywhere. So they were trying to figure out where he can
Bryant
play.
versatile. He's Chris Bryant versatile, where he's fine at third, but he's also fine at first, and he's also fine in left.
But he's a freak athlete. So you hope that gets better and better. He's definitely going to play fine in left at Fenway Park if you wanted to do that. So I don't know how you clear up the outfield situation. Maybe some days you give Rafaela a day off. Duran slides over to center field, and that's where, you're able to plug Christian Campbell in the outfield. He could be this like Chris Taylor type of super utility piece for them, where I think as long as you're getting him in the lineup 3-4 days a week, you can justify not having him in AAA. But if you don't feel like you can get him in the lineup 3-4 days a week, then put him back in AAA. Remember, he has not played that much professional baseball. It was an incredible year. He's arguably the best hitter in minor league baseball, but he needs his reps still too. Like, you can't just be sitting on the bench playing 2 times a week, especially with how unorthodox his swing is, and how he's going to be challenged, I think, with game plans and things like that as well. So I think this is the most fascinating lineup situation we have in minor league or Major League Baseball right now, both from a talent perspective, because it's so good, but also with the upper level prospects that are big league ready. Like, we're barely talking about Roman Anthony right now. That's a guy that could very easily play his way into the opening day roster. We talked about that on the call up. Like, they got a lot to sort out. And that's why I'm still surprised that Wilyer Abreu hasn't been moved, and maybe he will. I don't know. The Padres seem like the perfect match. The problem is I would not move a Wilyer Abreu in a deal for a 1-year pitcher. And that's all that the Padres really have to offer at this point.
I would think maybe they could add somebody but that farm system falls off after Salas and DeVries. So I'm thinking, okay, Cease for Wilyer, but you would need one more piece on top of Cease. And who is that piece if it's not Salas or Leo? Like, Romeo Sanabria, does he fire you up? Is Yuki Matsui that guy? Maybe. Cease and Matsui could work for Wilyer Abreu. That's the one that jumps to my mind, because he's a cheaper reliever, but it's still 3 years of control, and it'll escalate to like 5.5. But I think Boston would be comfortable enough taking that on if they're getting a year of Cease.
I think that who knows, but I think there still could be a trade out there, because it just seems too chaotic. And if the priority really is to still try to find a path for Christian Campbell, then I feel like the only way to do that is via trade.
Yeah, but the Red Sox are in a really good position, and they're in a better position after Nick Pivetta signed a 4-year, $55 million deal with the San Diego Padres, because the Red Sox get a pick.
I think that basically funnels straight to what they gave up to sign Bregman, right?
Yep, bingo. So, dude, I mean, it is awesome that they maneuvered it like that. And he was the guy, when we saw the qualifying offers extended, it was like, Pivetta? He might say yes. Like, it was Pivetta and Nick Martinez that we were looking at and saying, they might just say yes. Pivetta didn't. He got a nice deal, 4 for $55, and I'll get to the Padre fit in a moment. But, I mean, that is a roll of the dice that paid off for Craig Breslow.
Yeah. I mean, that was really impressive. Like, you got to have a feel for the market and what they're going to do. And, players aren't going to tip their hand on that either. That worked out really well. And to be able, because that was probably partially a deterrent to signing a Bregman too, especially for Craig Breslow, who's done well in the drafts in the last couple of years, being a part of the Cubs, situation there where they have nailed it. And planning to continue to do that with the Red Sox, where Chaim Bloom did. You can say what you want about him. He definitely nailed the drafts. So it was very savvy to maneuver it that way. And it worked out for Pivetta too, who gets more guaranteed. It's not the same AAV, but I think for Pivetta, he knew he wasn't going to get the same. He wasn't going to get the qualifying offer times 4.
For sure.
It worked out for him at 32 years old to get that deal. What was fascinating to me was, whoa, I thought the Padres have no money. And all of a sudden it's super, super heavily deferred. And that was Pivetta working with the Padres to make that happen. It made me really happy to see, because this Padres team, we've talked about it, is still talented enough to compete. And it just was so hard to talk yourself into it, because after Cease, King, and Darvish, it was a big drop off. Now you got Pivetta. They also signed Kyle Hart, who I think could be a fine depth arm. They needed depth in that rotation. So I think Hart is a nice addition too, coming over from the KBO. Like, it worked out nicely for them. I wonder if they're still going to try to clear up some money.
Maybe this rotation badly needed another body, and they got a good one. To your point, like they needed somebody else, so you're not piecing together two starts of, let's say, hey, they signed Kyle Hart, Vasquez, Brito, Waldron. Like it just, you weren't going to feel good about that being 40% of your rotation, but you can feel okay about that being 20% of your rotation, and that's what they do with this Pivetta signing. They extend it, and they have their postseason rotation assuming full health. Right, in Cease, in King, assuming they don't move them at this point, in Darvish and in Pivetta. And these are guys that I think complement each other very, very well. Where Darvish is the best kitchen sink guy that we've had in baseball in this generation. I think he throws 10 pitches, 12 pitches, whatever it may
100.
be. Yeah, King is horizontal masterclass. Like it's moving every which way. Cease, the stuff is absolutely insane. And Pivetta, I know it's a high release, but he is like the vert guy in Major League Baseball. So you have four drastically different looks from four guys that are objectively good at pitching. Like the Padres, we look at their lineup and we say 1 through 5, it's good, 6 through 9, ugh. And then we get to the rotation. 1 through 3, it's good, 4 and 5, it's ugh. We look at the bullpen. Hey, 7, 8, 9 is awesome. Sean Reynolds could really boom, but the end of that rotation is like, yeah, are we sure? It's the most top-heavy situation in Major League Baseball, and any depth matters, and they got good depth.
Yep. And they've been piecing it together a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to hold my breath on a Jason Hayward, but like volume shoot here. See if you can platoon your way into some success. Connor Joe, he might hit lefties enough, and Hayward might hit righties enough where you can piece it together there. I don't know. We'll see. But like at least they're filling it out a little bit. And again, the Kyle Hart thing, like I'm just glad they have another body there that could potentially just eat innings in the 5 spot. Where KBO, it's not comparable competition to Major League Baseball, but he struck out nearly 30% of batters and walked 6%. His slider is nasty. He seems to be able to just get enough consistently weak contact, and he finished the year insanely strong. So there might be something there. Clearly, the Padres were encouraged enough with what they saw at the end of the year, where over his final 4 starts at the KBO, he struck out 39 batters. Actually, sorry, even crazier. Over his final 4 starts, he struck out 35 in 21 innings, consistently limited basically any hard contact. So I feel like that's a guy that could eat innings for you in the 5 spot. You don't have to have a Randy Vasquez doing as much or whoever else they would have called on. But the most important point here is if you trade a Dylan Cease, then it's still a half step forward and a full step back after signing Pivetta. So that wouldn't really make sense to me.
I think so. This is them signaling that they're going for it this year. And this is probably the last shout because King hits the open market, Cease hits the open market. Yeah. And then that's when you entertain offers on whoever. I feel like the only untouchable at that point would be Tatis. Like I do think that, and Merrill, right. But if a team calls on Manny Machado and they're willing to take on that money based on the Padres' financial situation, they probably have to pick up the phone after this year. But that Pivetta signing to me was, this is our last go with Cease and King in contract years.
Especially with Arias still there as well. Like, I think they're just going to find a way to make it work. And I hope so, because at the end of the day, what's 8-10 million clearing up going to do for you at this point? And maybe, an owner can answer that a little bit more specifically, but if you're, and I know there's obviously some turmoil there, but I don't know what the potential could be. And I think just fan investment, moving a Cease, I think, I don't have a direct number there, but I'd imagine that it signifies something to the fan base enough that has been there and showed up and pretty much packed it every single day. Would you be surprised if a Dylan Cease trade was enough for 5% of fans to be disincentivized to go? Like,
I wouldn't be surprised.
That could offset with the loss in money pretty easily. So also a playoff run and those things. I mean, just making the playoffs should be able to chip away at that pretty easily as well.
Yeah, they are on this insane heater of sellouts. Like I think they're near the top of the league in sellouts, and I don't know what that means in terms of attendance. I have no idea what ballpark capacity is at Petco. I know the Dodgers led in attendance, but Dodger Stadium's massive, and I think it has 4 levels of seating behind home plate. But I mean, they pack that place to the gills every night for 81 nights in a given summer. And if they trade Cease, I'm with you. Like that could take away 5% of ticket sales, and that matters. Like that totally matters.
So it's just another thing. It would be signing Pivetta and then trading Cease would be half step forward and a full step back, both from a roster standpoint, and I think even potentially from fan interest and revenue standpoint. Again, I'm speaking out of turn on that front, but I'm just thinking about it in general. It would be hard for me as a Padres fan to get behind that.
For sure.
And especially after you already lost a couple guys. So yeah, I'm very fascinated to see how they navigate the rest of it. I think they're just doing their due diligence when you see like, oh, they're still listening or whatever. Because if you know that you're going to be, I think the last thing I'll say on this is, I think the biggest reason why the Padres are doing their due diligence on the Dylan Cease situation and even Michael King is not necessarily for the financials this year. I think they're looking at, hey, we're still going to be cash strapped next year and the year after that and the year after that. And we still need to field a roster. We've got a core here that can be very good, but we're not going to be able to spend anymore. So if you can get a Wilyer Abreu for the next 4 years and potentially another piece, like I know they were asking for Drake Baldwin and more from the Braves. Well, that would satisfy your catching position for the next several years. You wouldn't have to spend there. So I think they're dangling those guys saying, we'll move them if you're going to help set us up for the next few years. Exactly. If not, we're going to try to make a push this year and see what we can do.
Yeah, I love it. All right, we're going to get to the bullpen arms here. We are going to talk about the honorable mentions real quick before we go rapid fire 20 through 11 and then spend a little bit more time on 10 to 1. Our honorable mentions in terms of the best bullpen arms in Major League Baseball for 25, Jeff Hoffman signed back with Toronto. AJ Puck, the Arizona Diamondback, was acquired at the deadline. Jeremiah Estrada of the Padres. Michael Kopech, acquired by the Dodgers at the deadline. Lucas Erceg, acquired by the Royals at the deadline. The young right-hander Orion Kerkering in Philly. I say those names just to signal like all these guys could be top 10 at the end of 25. They could also be so far out of this conversation. It's unbelievable. Like Andres Munoz did not even make the honorable mentions. He's in the honorable mentions to the honorable mentions. Matt Brash could be a top 10 reliever in baseball. He was nowhere close because he was out with elbow surgery. If you hated the starting pitching conversation, you're going to hate the relief pitching conversation. It's the most volatile position maybe in sports, man.
It might be the most volatile. I was going to say in baseball for sure. It's probably the most volatile position in sports, to be honest. It's just because a guy can find a pitch and that makes all the difference, or change his arm slot or whatever. And we see that even with starters nowadays, but imagine with relievers. But you also have starters move to a relief role. You also have guys that are typically too volatile to be starters getting put in positions where when it clicks, oh yeah, that's why they were top prospects. When it doesn't click, oh yeah, that's why we moved you to the bullpen. Yeah. So it's extremely tough. AJ Puck is as good of an example as any, I think, especially when you talk about the honorable mentions, because Puck, I think, was one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball, basically from the 2 to 3 weeks before the trade to the Diamondbacks to after the trade. Like it was pure dominance, and he adjusted his release a little bit. He tweaked a couple little things with usage and literally it was just where he was releasing the ball, and it made all the difference in the world. And over his final 44 appearances of the year, this guy ran a 0.82 ERA. It's 44 innings, 68 strikeouts, 4 earned runs. 3 of those earned runs came in the final outing as well on the 28th. So if you eliminate that, he had a stretch of 43 appearances where he had a 0.21 ERA. That's 1 earned run in 43 and 2/3 innings, only 16 hits allowed, and 68 strikeouts with just 8 walks. You think that guy figured something out?
I think so.
But then he could pop out next year or this coming season and be back to the frustrating AJ Puck we saw before. Like anything can happen. But I do think this guy found something. And it makes sense. The D-backs identified it and they bought in before it was too late. Yeah, they gave up some pieces, but I don't think they're going to regret that one bit.
No, I don't think so. And man, like again, Puck could be anything that has been in his bag over the last few years. I mean, he was amazing in Miami in 23, and then it was really rough to start 24, and then he was amazing in Arizona. It's fun. I was talking to somebody the other week, and they mentioned like a full season of a relief pitcher is like 2 months of a starting pitcher. A whole year is such a tiny sample for a reliever.
That's a really important note because, people talk about, and I push back on like BABIP and like luck and this and that. relievers can get lucky. Like
Yeah,
just
for
point
sure.
blank, relievers can get lucky. So that's why, like when you're comparing ERA and even some of the expected stats, like with the relievers for me when I was voting, I know everyone had their own criteria.
Yeah.
I was truly just looking at pure stuff, swing
Yeah.
and miss, and of course you're looking at the results at the end of the day. But like all of these guys had pretty ridiculous results. For me, it was
Right.
okay. How ridiculous are the whiff numbers and the stuff in general? And like those are the guys that if you've got the command and crazy
Yeah.
whiff numbers, you're going to more sustainably have that success. Of course, there's exceptions to that, like a Class A and whoever, and that's where the quality of contact side of things definitely comes in as well.
Yep. We've got a guy with a sub-2 ERA at number 20, and we're going to get into him in a moment. Before that, quick break. I'll start us with 20 because I teased it. Number 20 is Hunter Gaddis of the Cleveland Guardians. And here's the deal. Gaddis was one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball last year when you go by ERA, when you go by FWAR, whatever you want to look at results-wise, Gaddis was there. Hunter Gaddis in 78 appearances, which is a lot, by the way, 74 and 2/3 innings. He had a 1.57 ERA, a whip under 0.8. Opponents hit a .165 against him. The FIP, 2.82. So it signifies a little bit of luck there. Struck out 8 per 9. He walked fewer than 2 per 9. Eric was the high guy at 18. Majority of us sat in the 20 to 24 range. Leo had him outside the top 25. I like that stance from Leo
because I love Leo. Like none of it's ridiculous. He just like the guy knows as much baseball as anybody on our staff. It's just he is so unfazed by everybody else's rankings. Like that's my favorite thing about Leo. Like he's gonna stick to what he believes in. I'm probably was influenced a little bit at times. Like, oh wait, shit, everybody else has him at 20. Like I should probably get closer to 20. Leo doesn't give a shit about that. So I love Leo. But no, I mean, Gaddis is definitely a command guy. Like he gets swing and miss, no doubt about it. But I think a big part of what makes him good is you have 2 solid pitches. We're going to talk about guys that have 2 elite pitches, but 2 solid pitches that he commands the heck out of. And it's rare to have a reliever that, because again, usually if you're a guy that can land your fastball and your slider for a strike north of 70% of the time, teams are going to just try to figure it out as a starter for you. Like, okay, find that third pitch. Let's make this work.
Yeah.
But Gaddis moving to the bullpen, the way he's executing those 2 pitches, and like, don't get me wrong, he averaged 95.5. But in terms of whiff, nothing jumps off the page. But he locates so well, gets enough whiff when he needs to, that, I mean, he was just able to get guys out pretty easily. And it was consistent. And I think that's a big thing about it as well. Like, I don't think he's going to be some elite closer, as he progresses. But I think he's just such a reliable setup man and will be for a long time.
Yep. I'm with you, man. I feel like I had him in the 20s because, and I know the year was awesome statistically, but I can't see a closer here. It's like, okay, you need a K. Are you turning to Hunter Gaddis? I don't think so.
No. But the beautiful thing is in his ballpark too, he can really pitch confidently there and trust that he's not going to get burned. And it is refreshing to have a reliever that isn't a risk to give up that game-tying home run.
For sure.
Because a lot of the big whiff guys, it plays into it because the hitters are going feast or famine on it. You're not going to string together hits against them, so try to go deep. But also, generally, those guys are going to be
fly ball guys.
Risk to give up the big home run, right? It's usually a riding fastball that could just get back spun out of there, or they're spotty command-wise, so they hang one. Like, you don't have to worry about that as much with Gaddis, who, by the way, only allowed 4 home runs if you include the postseason. But I believe in the regular season, it was even less than that. Like, he was just incredibly consistent.
Yeah, for sure.
Number 19. This is definitely the most polarizing player on the rankings here. Ben Joyce checks in at number 19 from the Los Angeles Angels. We saw him as high as 11, which was you.
Yeah.
We saw him as low as unranked, or 30, by both Leo and Peter. Fink was not far off from you at 13.
Yeah.
I was somewhere in the middle with Eric. I was at 23. Eric was at 20. Put together a great year. 31 games, 34 and 2/3 innings, a 2.08 ERA, a 1.15 FIP. Didn't strike out as many guys as you'd expect.
Yeah.
For a guy that can touch 105 miles per hour, but also a guy that you're just going to have a hard time trying to barrel up, because it's not just the fact that he averages 101.5 miles per hour on his fastball.
I've got 102.1 on baseball.
I was going to say that's factoring in the minor leagues as well. If I sort by just the major leagues, yeah, it's north of 102. And if you keep sorting by as the season progressed, his final 20 appearances, he averaged 102.7 on his four-seam fastball. His splitter averaged 96.2. So you have a 6'6" freak show working down on the mound the way that he does, who was throwing harder and harder and harder as the year progressed. Final outing of the year, he averaged 104 miles per hour on his 10 pitches.
So he sat 104 in his final outing of the year, and the Angels, they were trying to compete for a wild card spot at that point, right?
On the final game, yeah, they thought they still had a shot.
Zero stakes baseball game. He's sitting 104.
Yeah.
That's why I have him at 11. I mean, I just see he threw 250 fastballs or whatever it was, and he sat 102.1. At the end of the day, and I see the strikeout numbers, and I'm with you, I want to see him much higher. At the end of the day, if you throw 105 and if you sit 102, I'm going to love you. And that's why I have him at 11.
Yeah, I mean, and just when the velo got to that point, it got to a point where he could just pretty much flip the glove up, say, try to catch up to this, I dare you. And then when you started to time it up, which I don't think anyone really timed it up, but if it seemed like guys were starting to get on it a little bit, let me flip in that splitter where somehow it has 7 miles per hour velocity separation, right, even though it's in the upper 90s almost, averaging 96.5. So, yeah, I mean, it's just crazy stuff there. I'd like to see a little bit more consistency with the secondaries, but at the same time, if you throw 103, 104, it may not matter that much. And I think a big reason why he doesn't need to get the ridiculous amount of Ks is guys are going to, these are major league hitters. They're good enough to get a piece of lumber on 104.
Sure.
But you know how people say, oh, they can time up everything. I believe that up to about 101.
Yeah.
Once you get past that, really hard to time that shit up.
Yeah.
And at that point, you know, your hands are getting blown up. You're catching it off the end. You're cheating. Guys are going to put it in play, but it's not going to be hit very hard. And that's what we saw. So it's confusing because you'd expect 104 to yield major strikeout numbers. But I'm okay with the Ben Joyce pitching to contact. I actually don't want him getting deep into counts.
104 pitching to contact. Yeah, good.
He kind of is to a degree. And that's the crazy part. So I'm fascinated to see if that splitter comes along a little bit further, he could be one of the best relievers in baseball. I am very concerned about the health.
Sure.
It just has continued to pop up with him. His brother, I think, retired actually, citing, medical reasons as well. And they throw uniquely, they throw really hard, but you could be concerned about health with anybody. So we got a 24-year-old that can throw 105. It's must-see TV, and I really hope he can stay available. So as high of a ceiling as anybody, and probably as low of a floor, considering the injury risk.
For sure, and I'm just dreaming on the ceiling, man. But we go to 18, and it's a different conversation. It's Blake Trinan of the LA Dodgers, and the reason that I say it's a different conversation is because it felt like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like him emptying the tank in the 24 postseason. That's the vibe that I got there. But the season was awesome. 50 games, 46 and 2/3 innings, ERA under 2 at 1.93, whip under 1, FIP under 3. He struck out 11 per 9. He walked 2 per 9. Peter had him at 9. The next highest was 19 from Eric and Fink. You had him at 25. Leo had him at 25. I was the middleman at 22. I understand what Peter's doing here because the sinker sweeper combo, the sinker slider combo is devastating. But it felt like he was, and he was awesome in the postseason.
Yeah.
For me, at least, I feel like that was his final crowning achievement. And I hate saying it, but it really felt like he was leaving it all out there during the 24 postseason.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying because he threw 2 innings and 2 1/3 innings, which was a guy that's coming off of shoulder surgery and then missed some time in August. As well, it definitely was okay, which I loved. You're 36.
Yeah, that's insane competitor mindset there.
But until we see it, is that fair? Do you think?
No, it's not. It's not
because he in 2 1/3 innings threw average 96.3 in that outing. But coming off of that little IL stint, I think it was the 21st of August. through the playoffs. He had 25 appearances. He pitched to a 1.26 ERA, struck out 31.6% of batters, walked only 4.4% of batters as well. Opponents hit below 200 against him. So, I mean, this is the most frisbee of frisbee sliders. He's got the sinker off of that. And then even a four-seamer that he was buzzing at the top, a cutter as well. Like he has really just continued to tweak and make himself better, I think, which is the craziest part. And it really just has been all about availability. I could hear any ranking of him, but sure. I do think that, I'm going to be 37 this year.
Yeah.
Could see him slowing down, but coming off of that shoulder surgery where I thought he was probably done, to be honest, and doing what he did, I'm never counting this guy out.
I understand.
Number 17. Talk about volatility. Brian Abreu checks in here. Brian Abreu, Houston Astros have spent money on relievers, no doubt about it. Abreu's a guy that when the Astros were making their postseason run, I thought he looked as unhittable as anybody I could remember in the last decade when he was going through that stretch where he pretty much was as unhittable as anybody in the decade if you pulled the numbers through a 10-inning stretch. He since has been a little bit more volatile, and if you look at 78 games in 2024, a 3.10 ERA, a 1.16 WHIP, 3.49 FIP, but he struck out nearly 12 per 9, walked less than 4 per 9. He's a very difficult player to kind of line up here. And if you look at the rankings, he kind of gets the edge, I think, just because there was more consistency across the board. You were the high guy at 14, and the low guy was Leo at 23. Yeah. But then I was at 22, Fink at 16, Peter at 17, and Eric at 20. So it was kind of consolidated with enough on the high end. But, you could argue in a lot of ways that a lot of the things that Blake Treinen has done when available has been better. But the peak of Brian Abreu, I think, is as good as any reliever in baseball. And we saw that through stretches. But you do have that inconsistency. The thing with him is I think that ERA is kind of inflated by a couple blow-up outings because you're getting – which I'm fine with. Like, if you give me 10 scoreless outings and then one blow-up outing, I'd rather that than 4 1 or 2 run outings where I got to go back to the bullpen again and use more guys. So that's kind of the story with Brian Abreu. But when he's on again, there's not much better.
I look at 24 and I see the numbers against the 4-seam fastball, and they were not good. Like opponents hit, I think, like $160. I know Caleb Moody has this in the write-up. Opponents hit $160 something against his 4-seamer in 23, and then that elevated by like nearly 100 points in 2024. Yeah. But guess what? Even with a diminished 4-seamer, the slider remained one of the best pitches in baseball, outright. Starter or reliever, that guy's slider is one of the best pitches in baseball, full stop. Like, nobody barrels it whatsoever, and the whiff rate is insane. And even in a year where his fastball is not playing, he's K'ing, 12 guys per 9?
Yeah. It was down a tick, which is interesting. The positive side was it climbed back up as the year progressed.
Cool.
And that's why I think he ended up getting the edge for us, where he averaged 96.7 this past year compared to 97.7, which is what he averaged the year prior, where the fastball played much better. But if you compare through the first half, really, so through July 9th, he averaged 96.6, and then from that point onward, averaged 97.2. But then if you pull from his final 10 appearances, averaged 98. And it's not a coincidence that the whiff rates went way up in those final 10 appearances. Opponents at 167 against his fastball and 121 against him, period. So he was dealing with something at the start of the year, and I think that affected him. And we saw him get healthy and feel like himself again. He was throwing harder than ever. So he's one of my picks that I think is going to have an absolutely massive year again in 2025.
I'm totally with you, man. And I think Abreu, like at points, he's the best option in that bullpen. And 24, I was watching Hader blow up. I was watching Presley not look like himself. And watching Abreu, I'm like, if you limit the blow up, man, like you can grab this closer role. Obviously, he won't get that opportunity because they're paying Hader $100 million. But he's one of those guys. It's like Devin Williams when Hader was in Milwaukee. You're a closer on 25 other teams. You just happen to be teammates with Josh Hader. Like that's how I view Brian Abreu.
Yep.
We'll jump to 16 here. It's Luke Weaver of the Yankees. And this is one of those names where, again, if you had this on the 25 bingo card a year ago, like February 16th, 24, hey, Luke Weaver is going to be a top 15 reliever, top 20 reliever in Major League Baseball, would have called you absolutely insane. But all hail Matt Blake, the Yankees pitching coach. They found a changeup, and dude, it worked. Luke Weaver was awesome this past year. And pre-All-Star break, this guy held opponents to a 163 batting average against. Full season numbers, 84 innings at a 2.89 ERA, a whip under 173 batting average against. He K'd 11 per 9. He walked fewer than 3 per 9. He was pretty even, to be honest. Everybody was 15 or 16 except Ryan, who had him at 18, and then I love Leo. He had him outside the top 25.
Okay. People must be listening saying, then who did Leo rank? Like,
right. Leo ranked like a Munoz and a Kerkering, and I totally get it because I was ranking a Munoz and a Kerkering. It's just we're so spread out across the board with all these relievers. There are 50 great relievers in Major League Baseball.
Well, all the other positions I looked at track record, right? Like you got to look at the last year or two and things like that. With the relievers, I'm just looking at pitch characteristics too. Like, okay, Luke Weaver became a different pitcher by every stretch of the imagination. What changed? Is it enough to make me believe that it's sustainable?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. The fastball ticked up 2 miles per hour, but it's not just that. He gained 3 inches of vert on his fastball as well. So getting 2 miles per hour and 3 inches of vert, that's like taking, if he was a prospect, he went from like a 45 grade fastball to like a 70. Like, that's outrageous. And then on top of that, your best pitch is a changeup.
Right.
So your fastball got better vert and more velocity, and then your best pitch is going to work off of that ideally. That's great news. The other crazy part is he killed more vert off the changeup. So he went from 15 and a half inches of vert on the four-seamer to 18 and a half inches of vert on the four-seamer. And then he went from 8 inches of vert on the changeup to 4.5 inches of vert on the changeup. And you want to have as much difference as possible. So you want less vert on the changeup, right? So he now has 14 inches of vertical separation compared to what was previously 7. And then also throws the fastball 2 ticks harder. I'm going to sign up to, what he's doing there. And then you also add in the fact that the cutter was effective for him. And, like he's got actually multiple pitches that he can mix in there. But the fastball changeup combination, that's just going to play, man. I got no doubt about it.
For sure. He's one of the better fastball changeup guys on this list. He might be the premier fastball changeup guy on this list, unless I'm blanking on somebody in the top 15.
Comes in here at number 15 is Jason Adam. And Jason Adam, ridiculous numbers.
Yeah.
He's great trade for the Padres there. I can understand giving up more when you have Jason Adam with control.
Sure.
It's crazy how much they gave up for, a Tanner Scott without control. I think Adam's going to be one of their key guys here. And, the 24 numbers, he should take a lot of pride in those. 74 games, a 1.95 ERA, 73 and 2/3 innings, a 0.86 whip, and a 158 batting average allowed. Again, another guy, 303 FIP. But I just think he's so unique, and it's kind of hard to pick it up from that short arm delivery. I just think it's going to play consistently. Opponents at 170 against him, 170 against him if you include the playoffs, but 158 on the year, that's hard to luck your way into. Rankings again.
Yeah.
I was the high guy at 11. Leo is the low guy at 30.
Nice.
Are unranked. Ryan had him at 14, Eric at 14, you at 18, and Peter at 19. What I like about Adam is it's a different type of reliever here where you can't just get the iPad from the coach when Adam comes in and say, okay, it's fastball slider, and he likes to run the fastball up. All right, I'm going to cheat for that. Or, okay, I'm going to spin on anything that starts down. He's fastball, changeup, cutter, slider. And he got a chase rate of 30% on the fastball, 40% on the changeup, and 36% on the cutter. And then the slider, when he locates it, is still got a swinging strike rate at 21%. That's like a starter's arsenal there. And it's pretty wild.
Yeah. I want to give Leo some love here before I give love to Jason Adam, because I'm looking at guys that were honorable mentions or lower that Leo had ranked. He had Hoffman ranked, he had Kerkering ranked, he had Munoz ranked, Kirby Yates, understandably so. He was one of 2 people to have Kirby Yates ranked. Matt Strahm he had in the top 15. Tyler Holton he had in the top 20. Then Evan Phillips, Aroldis Chapman, David Robertson. These are all guys that have a fair say to be top 20 relievers. It's just the group didn't agree. So now Leo looks like the guy that didn't rank anybody.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is there's like 40 relievers or 50
I know.
relievers that are all really good, and
I
I can
know.
understand getting behind those guys. We were joking about it. I was talking about this the other day where like our oldest Chapman is just he keeps having nasty years. I know he kind of runs out of gas or whatever, but
Yeah.
and then it's just do it again, 1 year deal, 13 mil every single time, and he does it again. Like I think he's almost gotten to the point where he's underrated too.
Right. On Adam, the only thing that I've got on him is weird wins sometimes. And he's not going to jump out in any of these like weird stuff queries or anything where, oh, this guy's throwing 98 with a crazy slider. By velos and shapes, and the slider shape may be weird just because of the slot, but like it's weird, man. You watch it on TV and it looks weird. I'm sure you watch it in the box and it looks weirder. So I get it with a Jason Adam. I understand why a lot of hitters struggle with him.
And when you have that arsenal like that, where it's several different pitches working in different directions from that short arm, and with the chase numbers to back it up, I'd imagine it's just a tunneling nightmare for hitters.
Right. Let's go to 14.
Huh.
Edwin Diaz, who are you, man? It's so hard. Leo had him at 6. Peter had him at 8. You had him at 19. I had him at 17. Eric had him at 15. Fink had him at 17. I get all of them. 53 2/3 at a 3.52 ERA, whip at 104. Opponents hit 187 against him, which felt really high. FIP over 3, but he struck out 14 per 9 again. Edwin Diaz, he's probably not going to match that 22 that he had, where he was maybe the best pitcher in baseball outright. Like he was carrying, I think, 2 hitters per inning at that point. Opponents were hitting like 100 against him. But Edwin Diaz, stuff in a vacuum is awesome. It's just execution. Sometimes he allows the big homer, and then that docks the ERA, and that docks, I feel like, the league-wide perception of Edwin Diaz. He is, for me, the poster boy of reliever volatility.
Yeah, I mean, he goes from either being the most unhittable or to sometimes frustrating. My concern and going into 25 is, obviously he's coming off of, the injury and it just, at times just didn't look fully like himself. But also, he really struggled against lefties to a degree that like you can't even chalk it up to. We talk about relievers being small sample sizes, so splits can be even more misleading. But you tell me if even in this sample sizes, if this is something that could be misleading, or if this is something that might be just an issue for him being mostly a fastball slider guy. 24 innings again, or excuse me, 29 2/3 innings in 2024 against righties, a 1.79 FIP, 5 hits per 9. He only gave up two home run 2% of the time.
Yeah.
He struck out 40% of batters and walked 3% of batters. A WOBA of 193 allowed. Against lefties, 24 innings, a 4.70 FIP, 7.5 hits per 9. The home run rate more than doubles to 4.5%. The walk rate, 15.5%.
Yeah.
With a 338 WOBA. He did still strike out 38% of batters, though.
Right. So I've got like the standard numbers in front of me as well. 101 ABs against right-handed hitters, 91 ABs against left-handed hitters. So it's a pretty even sample. He K'd 42 righties and 42 lefties. 101 ABs against right-handers, he walked 3. 91 ABs against lefties, he walked 17. Like, that's crazy. And then OPS flat out, opponent like righty hitters against him at a 436 OPS. Lefties had a 774 OPS.
Like, if you're one of the best closers in baseball, it shouldn't be that drastic. Let's go get a lefty in here and he's going to be in trouble. That's a concern for sure. Right. But again, he can get back to just being Edwin Diaz and just be purely unhittable again. Right. But the velo was down. I think that was the big thing that concerned me too. Like 2022, he averaged 99.2 and the slider averaged 91. And he's just a fastball slider guy. Those pitches are so nasty that it didn't matter if you were a lefty or righty nearly as much. And he struck out 52% of lefties and walked only 9.5% of them that year. And he struck out 48.5% of righties and only walked 6% of them because both pitches were just so video game and outrageous. And also the command was a little bit better. 71% strike rate on the slider. But the command waned a little bit. He sprayed the fastball a little bit more and it was down a tick and a half. Like that's going to affect you. So what Edwin Diaz are we going to see? I think the high level or the high number of non-competitive pitches from him for like the first time ever was a little concerning for me, especially off of the patellar thing. And like, I just don't know what version we're going to get in 25. And that was enough for me to be the low guy on him.
I understand. And like, all we can do is sit here and find out, but I also don't fault Leo and Peter for being like, yeah, of course he's a top 10 reliever.
Yeah, because he has been literally one of the most dominant relievers we've seen through full seasons.
Yeah, I get it.
13. Ryan Walker. You should have got Ryan Walker here. What's crazy is you were actually tied for the low guy here somehow.
I cannot believe that. I owe him an apology. Like, I feel so bad. And I thought I was being like kind of lofty. I was like, oh yeah, Walker's 15. Like,
you were tied with Ryan, had him at 15. Peter was the high guy with Leo at 12. I had him at 14. Eric had him at 13. This guy is just a machine.
Yeah.
Talk about the weirdest look that there is. He legitimately looks like he's throwing the ball. So, I'll get into that in a second. But 2024 stats, 76 games, 10 saves, 80 innings, a 1.91 ERA, a 0.85 whip, a 177 opponent batting average, 2.52 FIP. So the underlying loves him too. But also 11 strikeouts per 9 and only 2 walks per 9. This is a guy that does both, right? He's getting you the whiffs. He's getting you weak contact. And he's also getting you, I just think, the consistency and filling up the zone and only walking 6% of batters. You're getting stuff. You're getting funk. You're getting uncomfortable at bats. And you're getting strikes. And it's like, what else do you want out of a reliever? He legitimately looks like he's going to fire the ball into the third base dugout.
I was going to say he's playing catch with the third base coach. And the fact that he can sit 95.5 doing that, how does that anatomically make any sense?
He literally, it's like he said, how far can I go facing the other way while still throwing strike? And he somehow figured that out. I mean, he gets 15 inches of horizontal on the sinker and just 3 inches of vert. So it's heavy and it runs, which also plays up from the crossbody, like freak show delivery. I mean, the ball's got to look like it's coming straight from third base, but then it looks like it's coming back at you, then runs back away from you again. And then the way that probably works off of the slider that also gets 15 inches of horizontal, like he's getting 30 inches here of horizontal separation, which plays up with his bizarre delivery. This guy's going to be good forever. I really believe that.
For sure. But I'm also like, I'm still just hyper fixated on it's in the strike zone all the time. Like, you would think if it's that funky and that much movement, he's going to miss. Like, there's just no misfires here. And the fact that he can somehow grab 96 miles an hour, like on average, it doesn't make any sense to me. And that's why I love him. Yeah.
He's gonna be a machine for them consistently. And I mean, they use him so much too, which I think is so valuable as well. 84 appearances. If you combine everything last year, like from the start of camp, like he's just always throwing. I mean, this guy's a monster.
Yep. So is number 12, also in the National League West. Justin Martinez of the Arizona Diamondbacks is number 12. I was the high guy at 10, and the low guy was Peter at 15. So we were pretty even across the board. Like, this guy is in the 10 to 15 range in terms of relievers in Major League Baseball for 2025. 64 games. He was thrusted into the closer role at the end of the year. 8 saves, 72 and 2/3 innings at a 2.48 ERA, a 2.59 FIP, 11.5 strikeouts per 9, 4.5 walks per 9. Young guy that throws absolute fuel. Yeah. And if you like watching Ben Joyce, you like watching Justin Martinez too.
And then you got several pitches you got to worry about too, right? You got the sinker, you got the four-seamer, you've got that splitter, which is diabolical, and then you got the sinker as well, the slider as well. But I think the reason why he doesn't quite crack the top 10 is just it was a limp to the finish line. Maybe he ran out of gas to a degree, whatever it may have been. But over his final 20 appearances, opponents at 274, 358, 405 against him. It's kind of surprising to just see hitters be able to perform at all against him. But I think the command started to spray a little bit, and then young guys you mentioned, like he was 22 years old for the majority of the season, and it seemed like those tough outings, like where things started to unravel. With your high leverage guys, you need them to lock back in. Who cares if the bases are loaded and no outs? You can strike out the next 3 when you got that kind of stuff. Right. He seemed to wear it a little bit, and that'll probably come. But probably one of the youngest guys, if not the youngest, that we're going to talk about the rest of this episode. So if that's the missing piece here, he's very easily going to be the top 10 guy in this conversation, I think, going into 26.
Yeah, I mean, dude, like he sat 100 with that sinker. and a 54% whiff rate on that split.
Yeah.
Opponents hit 098 against it. He threw it 257 times and they slugged 122 against it. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, that's gonna play.
It's nasty. That's gonna play. That's like Devin Williams' changeup level of success with a certain pitch.
Yep. Number 11, Josh Hader, the Astros, which is funny because like he's a guy that was pretty much consensus should be number 1 for a while, and then it was well off of that, and now he's kind of somewhere in between. Yeah. But 2023, I think, is doing a lot of lifting here for him because 2023 got back to the guy that we've seen, and that gets him the benefit of the doubt. But then 2024, you saw the swing and miss still there, but it was still kind of frustrating because he would just give up the long ball at points and blow games. 71 appearances, 34 saves, 71 innings, which is funny. 71 appearances and 71 innings. You know how he likes to roll.
Yeah.
3.80 ERA, but a 0.96 WHIP, a 171 batting average against, 3.50 FIP, 13.3 strikeouts per nine, just 3 walks per nine. We were even across the board pretty much here. Trio of 11s with Fink, Leo, and Eric. Peter and I were the low guys at 13, and you checked in at 12. I mean, I think this year will kind of decide whether he's right back up into the top of the reliever conversation or starts to slide his way down a little bit. But the stuff is still there for him. He's a guy that gets a ton of fly balls. And I think we saw the result there where it burned him at points late in ball games. And that was just kind of the difference. It seems like it's just execution for him because the stuff is still there.
It's totally different because Hader's available and this starting pitcher is unavailable. But I kind of give him the DeGrom treatment where he's near the top until proven otherwise on field. And like, I don't know, I just, for some reason, I give him the benefit of the doubt where it's like, oh, well, you've built such a strong track record. I look at the last 5 years, and even when it feels like you have a down year, it's still fine. And it's still palatable for a good closer in Major League Baseball. And like, I look at him in the same way that I look at DeGrom and Trout when we're doing the starting pitcher rankings and the center field rankings, where it's like, okay, how far can I actually push you down because I'm excited about other guys before just coming to the conclusion that you're Josh Hader and you're awesome and you get a bunch of whiffs. I feel like this is probably the last chance. If he deals with these blowups again in 25, he's getting closer to 20 for me than 10.
Well, and to be more fair too, to like an Edwin Diaz, right, who's kind of in a similar conversation where he's shown it, but I think he's shown that volatility even at where he should have been at his peak, where we had a stretch where Hader, it was every single year for pretty much 4 years, where it was unhittable 5 years really. So that's the interesting conversation here, but he is kind of heading to that Edwin Diaz, what are we getting here type of outlook. Yep.
All right, we're going to get to the top 10 in a moment, but we will take one more quick break. All right, number 10, as we get into the top flight guys, Raisel Iglesias, the closer for the Atlanta Braves, checks in at number 10. 34 saves for him last year for Atlanta in 66 appearances, spanned 69 and a third innings. He had a sub-2 ERA. He had a whip at 0.74. Opponents hit a $156 against him. Struck out fewer than a hitter per inning, but walked fewer than 2 per inning. Leo was the low guy at 16, Peter at 14, me at 13, Fink at 9, you and Eric at 8 were the high guys. I get it. This guy is so safe. I think there are guys with louder stuff in Major League Baseball, and that's probably why I had him in the low teens. But I mean, it's hard to find 9 guys above him that I'd rather have closing out games for a team that's trying to win 100 games every single year.
Especially when you look at, like, there's a pretty tangible switch here where the second he became an Atlanta Brave, he just became one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball. And that's the interesting wrinkle in this whole thing is, like, it was really, and I don't know if it's just a little unfair. Maybe you just needed a change of scenery or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a little unfair to the Angels, but I mean, 2022, he had a 2.47. 2023, he had a 2.75. In 2024, he had a 1.95. So, yeah, maybe he outpitched some peripherals slightly. This dude had a 0.74 whip. Like, that is insane. I feel very comfortable with him in the 9th. Yeah, he may not get the swings and misses to the degree, but he's also going to be one of the best weak contact inducers that you have. average exit velocity allowed of 86 miles per hour this past year. So that would have put him in the top 3% of Major League Baseball. Expected batting average south of 200. So the peripherals still liked him. Like the expected ERA was 2.24 instead of 1.95. Like doesn't walk anybody, and he's still going to get his Ks. Like a 26% strikeout rate when you're inducing the weakest contact almost in Major League Baseball. That's going to be a pretty good combination, and I just think he's as safe as they come.
I mean, dude, our number one guy is fewer than a strikeout per inning too. Like he's under 9 strikeouts per 9. If you keep the ball on the ground and you keep the ball in the ballpark, that's the biggest thing. Soft contact on the ground, you're setting yourself up for success. And Atlanta never felt uncomfortable with Rysel on the mound to close a game.
Absolutely. And here's the next guy. I mean, it's wild because he's one of those guys that could be a closer for a lot of ball clubs as well with the way he looked last year. Griffin Jax checks in from the Minnesota Twins. 72 appearances, 10 saves, 71 innings pitched, a 2.03 ERA, 0.87 whip, 181 batting average allowed, a 194 FIP. So pretty absurd there too. 12 strikeouts per 9 and only 2 walks per 9. That's the other crazy part. Like he is not giving away any free passes despite having such ridiculous stuff. Gets a ton of ground balls, gets a ton of whiff. And I think he's just scraping the surface of I don't think the numbers are going to get that much more insane, but scraping the surface of what I think the league is going to start to look at him as, which is one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball, and a guy that, if Duran is hurt or inconsistent, can absolutely step up like he did last year and close out games and continue to pitch at leverage. He gets hitters to chase as much as anybody. He gets the weak contact on the ground. He gets the whiffs, and he doesn't walk guys. Like that's what we talked about off the top. That's going to make you one of the best pitchers in baseball, and that's what he was out of the bullpen.
He and Morahone were the two that I saw all the threads on. Like, oh, he could be a really good starting pitcher, and then Clay Holmes signed as a starting pitcher. I get it. I will say I love watching Jax because he is hyper athletic. Like we're going to talk about a lot of big guys that throw really hard because they're big. He spins off a sweeper because he's super athletic and he gets the most out of his body. And like you watch the delivery, it seems high energy and high effort, but it also seems smooth. Like it seems like he knows where every single limb is going at all times. He's a very aesthetically pleasing watch for a high octane reliever.
I mean, I'm looking at some sweepers that he was throwing too, because there's variance to him as well, where he can kind of manipulate it because of that athleticism. He's throwing sweepers north of 3,000. I mean, he averaged over 3,000 RPM, but he had sweepers getting 21 inches of horizontal. Like he could triple up on them, but then he would throw some that were just getting 13 and they were harder. Like the feel to manipulate the pitch, I think is what makes him also really difficult, where I just don't know how you game plan for that, where it's going to be 21 inches of horizontal at 87, and then it's going to be 15 inches of horizontal at 88, 89. On top of that, having the other offerings that he has and throwing them all for strikes. I get why people say he could be moved to the bullpen or to the rotation.
Right.
Let's just keep him as one of the best relievers in baseball.
I think so. And again, he could be a closer for a lot of other teams, but he's not the closer for Minnesota because his teammate checks in at number 8, and it's Yohan Duran of the Minnesota Twins. Duran, across the board statistically, had a worse year than Griffin Jax.
Yep.
But if you watch Yohan Duran, you understand why he's the number 8 reliever in Major League Baseball. I had him at 6, and I was the high guy. There were 2 guys at 9, you and Eric. It was Fink at 8, and then Leo and Peter at 7. Numbers on Duran, 58 games. I think it was an oblique thing that he missed the first, couple weeks of the season with.
Yeah, I just saw a piece, I think, about just he realized he needed to come in just better shape. I think that was from Dan Hayes, right? For The Athletic.
Dan Hayes, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's MLB. Yeah, he might be The Athletic. He used to write for MLB.com. Yeah.
But because the fastball was down about, even when he was on the mound, about a tick and a half. So there's a focus on the conditioning side of things, and we'll see how that looks. But yeah, it was the worst year that we've seen from him. It was still fine.
It was still fine. And it was 23 saves, a 3.6 ERA, a 2.85 FIP, and then 11 Ks per 9 and 2.5 walks per 9. Duran is 103 with a splinker at 98, and it's crazy. It's objectively crazy stuff-wise, and I'm expecting a bounce back wholly in 2025.
That splinker is probably, when we were talking about Mount stuff more, probably an omission there that it's got to be one of the most ridiculous pitches in Major League Baseball history. Like, how do you have a splitter at 99? And he's really the first guy that unveiled that, and we're like, what the hell is that?
Right.
That alone makes him special. But yeah, when you're averaging 102 as well, which he has, but when he's healthy, then also has a banger curveball. Like, that's an outrageous 3-pitch mix.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm excited to see him, hopefully better conditioned and fully healthy and ready to go. That 1-2 punch could be as good as any in Major League Baseball.
Absolutely.
Number 7, got right back to dominating again this past year, and the benefit of the doubt, I think, helped him as well. You combine those, and Ryan Helsley is one of the best relievers again in Major League Baseball, and somehow still a St. Louis Cardinal. But in 2024, 65 appearances, 49 saves, 66 1/3 innings, a 2.04 ERA, a 1.10 WHIP, a 2.41 FIP, struck out nearly 11 per 9, walked just 3 per 9. Helsley, again, when he's healthy, he is a monster, and it's a combination of just being able to overwhelm you with a fastball that averaged 99.3 miles per hour, but it's really the slider being one of the best sliders in Major League Baseball and then commanding it the way that he does. To get a 45% chase rate while also landing it for a strike at a 71% clip, that combination, and of course the chase rate contributes to that, but still, you got to throw it around the zone enough. To combine that is just crazy. Like, to have a 48.5% in zone rate and then a 45% chase rate, you're essentially dominating with one of the best pitches in baseball, where when it's in the zone, no one can touch it, 35% in zone whiff rate. And then when it's biting out of the zone, hitters can't lay off of it. Then you can also mix in a 101 fastball that could get up to 101. This guy's one of the best closers in the game.
Yes. It's again, rinse and repeat. He's one of the best closers in the game. He's one of the best closers in the game. Helsley, it is very fun to watch. And I don't know what St. Louis's plan is. Like, I don't know. Do they have something up their sleeve in March? No idea. I want to see this guy throwing really big innings in October. That would be awesome.
Just to point something out real quick too, before we get to number 6.
Yeah.
When people are just complaining, like the old heads are complaining, oh my gosh, these guys just sell out for launch angle and home runs. Look at the lists of guys that are coming out of the bullpen that you have to deal with, that we're talking about right now. That we're at 7 and the stuff that we're talking about. That's why batting averages are down. It's not because of a commitment to sell out for lift.
No, dude.
They don't care about making. And I know, like the vast majority of the people we're listening to, this is not even directed towards.
Right.
But just this, it hit me just now. Like, we've been talking about different pitches that would have made Babe Ruth convulse. Yeah. And like, we're still like, there's people out there that rag on baseball players for not making enough contact. Shut up.
2 of our honorable mentions are AJ Puck, which is one of the weirdest looks that we've got in baseball, and it's 99. And then Kirkering, who's 100 with an 80 grade slider. Honorable mentions outside the top 20.
That
Ben Joyce was what?
Would have been among the best relievers in baseball.
Dude, Joyce was 18. Joyce throws 105 miles an hour, and he's 18 on this list.
This guy's got to make more contact, man.
Yeah, they have to. It's just brutal. I mean, I can't watch this sport anymore. All right, let's go to number 6. And you want crazy stuff, and you want a crazy fastball too. Cade Smith of the Cleveland Guardians is number 6. 74 games, 75 1/3 innings, whip under 1, a 1.91 ERA. Opponents hit a $1.90 against him, a 1.4 FIP. He led all relievers in F4, 12.5 strikeouts per 9, 2 walks per 9. Eric was the high guy at 4. Me and Fink were at 5. You were at 6. Peter and Leo were at 10. I get the 10 thing because he just did it for the first time, and he was like non-drafted free agent out of Hawaii. It was like this pop-up crazy. But you can speak to the fastball metrics better than I can.
Yeah.
Is there any way this slumps?
No. That's what I was about to hit on that. I'm glad you just teed me up. Like that, when a guy breaks out like that, go straight to the data. He averaged 96 on the fastball. He gets 16 inches of vert from a 5.8 release height, which is good. Like, that's solid. Gets 7.5 feet of extension.
Yeah.
No one gets 7.5 feet of extension from that release point. And then also it's a very flat vertical approach angle. So that vert's going to play up even more.
Yeah.
that's fastball's going to play. It's one of the best fastballs in Major League Baseball. I've very little concern about that. And then it's a tunneling thing from there too, where it looks like he's handing the ball to the catcher, and then off of that is a splitter. He threw his four-seamer 70% of the time, and it always works. And I only think he's going to get better as he gets more confidence with the secondaries. It's going to keep playing.
Yeah, dude, it's impossible to like barrel this thing up. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that you can see the extension, but you can see that it's kind of weird. And like, it looks normal, but it's not normal. As lazy of analysis as that is, it looks normal, but it's really not, I promise.
I mean, and that's like Zach Wheeler almost extension.
Yes.
Like that's some crazy stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Number 5 is a guy that I'm glad he got his bag. I'm not thrilled that it was with the Dodgers, but you know what? This guy with Howard College and climbing his way up with the Marlins, after being traded from the Orioles, Tanner Scott, man, like he's turned himself into, and this is a guy that we needed to see him do it again. He did it again and did it better after 2023. 2024, 72 appearances, 22 saves, 72 innings, a 1.75 ERA, a 1.13 whip, a 175 opponent batting average, a 2.92 FIP, 10.5 strikeouts per 9, 4.5 walks per 9. He's going to spray a little bit here and there, but I think he's definitely reined that in enough. But he's also a guy that is so unfazed. And I watched this like when the Marlins made their playoff run in 23, or made the run to get to the playoffs in 23. Yeah. They would put him in any horrible situation, and him and Andrew Nardi would escape it. But especially him, whether he created that situation or was put in to get out of that situation, he didn't care if the bases were loaded and there was no outs. He could get out of it. He's an escape artist because he is so damn nasty. Velocity-wise, he can get it up there. But it's also the looks that he gives you, and it's also just how hard it is to pick up what he is throwing. Yeah. He had the lowest average exit velocity allowed in Major League Baseball. You pair that with the fact that it gets a ton of whiffs. I think the big thing for him was, okay, can he get righties out at the same clip? And as he started to get the command, under control, that helped a ton. But you talk about characteristics, man. This might be one of the biggest outlier fastballs in Major League Baseball. 5.3 foot release height. And just for reference, like average release height's 5.9. The lower the release height, the harder it is to induce vertical break. The average release height's about 5.9, and the average induced vertical break from that release height's about 16 inches. So theoretically, 16.5 inches from a 5.9 release height would be above average. 16 inches from a 5.8 release height would slightly be above average.
Yeah.
He gets 17 inches of vert from a 5.3 release height. That's off the charts. That's also at 97 miles per hour.
If he was releasing normally, like if he was at a 5.9 release, it's
that
would
not still be slightly above average vert.
Right. And it's not apples to apples, but like if he was at a 5.9 release height, we'd be talking about this guy with like 21 inches of vert in his fastball. And like people love that number.
Up there.
Yeah, like they love that number, but dude, like this plays better because it's taking off. This is a true rocket ship fastball. And I know a lot of people hit on this when he signed with the Dodgers. He might have been the only guy to make Shohei Ohtani look really uncomfortable. Yeah. Like there's something to be said about that. When you can make the elite of the elite shake in their shoes a little bit, that's what Tanner Scott can do.
Yep. And again, because you're getting an angle that you just have not really seen with carry that you've not really seen at 97 miles per hour. That's going to help you. And then on top of that, the slider is just outrageous. And you mentioned like Ohtani looked legitimately uncomfortable. Lefties have no shot, but righties don't do much better. Right. He's I think now following up that breakout in 2023 with an even better year.
Yeah.
I think you know what you're getting at this point.
For sure. Let's go to number 4, who also is wearing new threads, and he is playing for the other team that was in the World Series. 4 is the airbender, Devin Williams of the New York Yankees, after being acquired from the Milwaukee Brewers. Injury shortened 24, but in 22 appearances and 21 2/3, he racked up 14 saves, and he had a 1.25 ERA. And opponents, it was a 2.06 FIP, whip under 1. He K'd 16 hitters per 9, 15.8 per 9. Fink, Leo, Eric had him at 3. I had him at 4. You and Peter had him at 5. He was not going to fall any lower than 5. It's amazing. He's missed time over the last few years, and he's a little bit more erratic than the top 3 on this list. But if you put together a Mount Rushmore of current relievers, he's absolutely on that Mount Rushmore, and that's obviously why he checks in at 4.
I mean, it's one of the best pitches I think in Major League Baseball history.
Probably.
It's a pitch that I think will like always be remembered.
Yeah.
No matter how his career goes, whether he's in Cooperstown or not, like that pitch might as well be in Cooperstown just because of how unique it is and what it has done for his career. It is very two pitch oriented. So, that's going to make it difficult at times maybe, but it hasn't been difficult for him. People are going to point towards, the home run he gave up to Alonso. See, like that's something that, a two pitch guy can be exposed to. Like, you could say that about any reliever that blows it and gives something up. Like it happens all the time. Since the start of 2020, opponents are hit 129 against his changeup, and he's thrown it 55% of the time. Try to find me a more valuable pitch in baseball.
There isn't one. Do you have like average exit velocity or like hard hit rate against that?
I have. So I have the 50th percentile exit velocity, which is
what is the 50th? What is the 50th?
84 miles per hour.
Come on, that's the top half of batted balls look like 84 miles an hour.
Yeah, like that is stupid. Hard hit rate is 24%.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's gonna play. And by the way, the craziest part is he's only given up 6 home runs on that pitch since 2020.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Pete Alonso grabbed one of them.
Yeah.
It wasn't off that pitch, but grabbed one.
Yeah.
Number 3. I cannot wait to watch this guy back healthy. Talk about a freak. Felix Bautista. An absolute monster on the mound. Didn't pitch as he was recovering from Tommy John surgery, but it sounds like he should be full bore ready to go, right? This coming season?
Yep.
6'8", 285 is what this dude is listed at.
Mm-hmm.
Last time we saw him, his fastball averaged 99.6 and his splitter average 88.5. He also will mix in a curveball here and there, but it's all about the fastball and the splitter. In 2023, opponents at 141 against him. It's just coming from that body and that slot. I don't think there's a more imposing figure in Major League Baseball. And I don't think there's a guy that I would be more likely to pee in my pants if I had to stand in the box than Felix Bautista. He doesn't get like 7.5 feet of extension. It's kind of rare, honestly, for guys to get mega extension at, 6'8" like that, but he does still get slightly above average extension. And that's more than enough for him when he's throwing at that velocity.
Hi, Kona. Are you Doug?
Did you see the pupper?
I popped. Yeah, I saw bottom left corner, bottom right corner. Felix Bautista. I'll just walk you through the savant numbers here. His splitter in 22, his first year in Major League Baseball. Opponents were 8 for 92 with 59 strikeouts. And then in 2023 against the split, opponents were 9 for 75 with 52 strikeouts. So it got worse, and opponents hit $120 against it and slugged 160. And it had a 60% whiff rate. So we talked about fastball changeup with Weaver, and I said there probably isn't a better guy on this list with a better fastball changeup. Fastball split, there's no one close to Felix Bautista. He is beat you with vertical difference. Like, he's not going to beat you horizontally whatsoever. It's fastball at the top, splitter at the bottom, and you're going to look like a moron whichever one he throws. And it's
a super high release point, but
it really
doesn't really matter. It probably works to his favor.
Yeah.
It's a 7-foot rule. I don't know if that's got to be the highest release height in Major League Baseball.
I would think
he's also getting 20.5 inches of vert. So I'd imagine it's got to be really hard to pull the trigger. I think every pitch probably looks like it's falling from the fucking sky.
Right.
Like that's got to be insane to see. That's a guy that, like, if I could see like the traject simulation, what would they do? Would they have to like elevate the traject machine?
Yeah, they probably put it on like a milk cart. Yeah, they put it on like a milk crate or something.
How do you prepare for a guy like that?
You don't. I think you just tip your cap.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what that looks like, man. It's gonna be a movie again, and I don't know. Baltimore had some bullpen issues last year, and they are not gonna have some ninth inning issues at all this year. Let's get to number 2 here, and number 2 is a consensus number 2. All of us had him as the second best reliever in baseball. Mason Miller in Sacktown. Mason Miller last year, 55 games, 28 saves, 65 innings, had a 2.49 ERA, but a whip under 0.9. Batting average against under $160, K'd 14.5 per 9. It's an 80 grade fastball. It's probably the only 80 grade fastball in Major League Baseball.
It's one of the few. I mean, he averages. I mean, you got to put Ben Joyce now in there, right? And maybe a couple others, but you can
like
only
the
have
whiff rate's way
three of them.
higher. You're
What?
right. But the
Yeah,
whiff rate's way higher on Mason Miller.
this is a better fastball because
Yeah.
how do you get plus extension while throwing 101 and getting like good carry as well? Like it's not great carry, but 101 generally doesn't get carry like that. It just isn't going to ride the same way.
Not just 101, dude. Like he ticks up to 103 when it's a huge moment. Like that's the thing. If it was 101 with great carry, that's one thing. 103 with that carry, with those characteristics,
just explodes through the zone. Yeah, I mean that's the craziest part. You look at the whiff numbers across the board, like, and also he locates 70% strike rate. He drills his spots when he's dialed in. 35% in zone whiff, 35% chase rate. Like it is dominance. And then he locates the breaking ball as well. He is as fun to watch as anybody in Major League Baseball. But you imagine from that, with that velocity, getting up to 103, and then he's also getting borderline plus extension. It's got to be a nightmare at bat. And it just consistently has been when he's on the mound.
It's got to feel like 107, 108 if he's getting above average extension like that.
And it explodes through the plate too, where it definitely has. He averaged over 2,500 RPM on the fastball. Like, it's got to feel like that.
100%.
Number one, just a guy that you're just never going to be able to barrel up, except maybe in the playoffs. I don't know, but so weird. But 2024, Emmanuel Clase put together one of the best reliever seasons we've really ever seen. 74 appearances, 47 saves, 74 in a third innings pitch, a 0.61 ERA, a 0.66 whip, 151 opponent batting average, a 2.2 FIP, only 8 strikeouts per 9, but only 1 walk per 9. And he doesn't need the strikeouts. He's one of those closers that, and people might say, oh, well, maybe that's why he struggled in the playoffs. No, it's not. He just didn't execute. I don't know what happened, but it's not because he's not a strikeout artist.
Right.
If it's worked the way it has, if you can pitch to a 0.61 ERA, we talk about small samples, 74 innings is enough at that ERA and a 0.66 whip for that to play. It just, for whatever reason, didn't fully work in the postseason. Average exit velocity against is among the lowest in Major League Baseball. The way that cutter works, that gyro break at really 100 miles per hour, it's an outlier pitch. You just haven't really seen anything like that. To have the gyro break at 100, you're not going to be able to lay off of it. And if it's a strike, you're not going to be able to really barrel it. You're going to get on top of it, and you're probably not going to hit it hard. And off of that, he's able to, one, locate it, and then he can throw a bigger slider off of it. But it's the closest thing we've had to Mariano in terms of just, here's one pitch. It's a pitch a pitch that people will talk about, I think, forever. I still don't think it gets enough conversation just about the individual pitch, the way the airbender does. Here's one pitch. You're not going to barrel it, and I don't really care if you think you can. Again, I can already see the YouTube comments about the postseason. It's like 1 or 2 games ultimately, right? Like it's all it really was, a couple games. He can throw that pitch all the time, and he threw it 80% of the time. No one can touch it.
You ever seen a BABIP under 200?
Not in that big of a sample size. I don't think so. Like 60% ground ball rate with a BABIP under 200.
A BABIP under 200. Like opponents had a 197 batting average on balls in play. Normal BABIP is like mid 300s, maybe low 300s, right? Probably mid 300s. I mean, dude, come on. Like it's video game stuff, and you're right. It is the closest thing to Mariano. When you look at like stuff in a vacuum, Mariano clearly had something that made it.
I wish I'd pay so much money for TrackMan data on Mariano.
Yeah, dude. Like I don't know, and the thing is, like I don't know what it was because it was like a 91 mile an hour cutter, 92 mile an hour cutter, but like it just worked, and I think it was the timing of the break. Like that's at least anecdotally everything I've heard about the Mariano Rivera cutter is like the timing of the cut made zero effing sense.
And I think this has something similar going on where it's just that late gyro, that late drop downwards, that it's so tough at 99, then late dive.
Right. So, I mean, it's a perfect pitch, and he's, I think, the perfect closer. So Cleveland's got a great one.
Yeah. I mean, and like I hope he's, he doesn't have to post it on social, but I hope he's looking at all those awards and reminding himself. He doesn't need to remind everybody else. Sure. But Yeah, he is. He's 26.
Also, did you see him? Did you see him just max efforting weighted balls?
No, I
Yeah,
didn't see.
he's 26 years old. Did you see him max efforting like weighted balls into a brick wall in the Dominican? Like
No,
crazy.
that's sick. He's just incredibly unique, and yeah, coming off again one of the best seasons ever. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on the playoffs, and I think it's going to light a fire under him for what's going to be another really good year. He's the top dog. Yeah, and until maybe a full healthy season for Mason Miller can make this conversation, but until then, yeah, I think Clase is the top dog.
Clase's crown to lose. Real quick, I've got a last word that is loosely related to the reliever list, and we talk a lot about the state of baseball as a whole in 24 and 2025. This was kind of like the poster thing. This was so emblematic of where baseball is. I saw this kid, Michael Salina, throw. Joe Doyle tweeted that he hit 102 miles an hour on opening day.
Bonaventure, right?
For Bonaventure. He hit 102. He hit 102 in the fall. He threw 4 pitches at 100 in the fall. St. Bonaventure is bottom of the Atlantic 10. Like, I looked at the last 3 years. 2022, they were 5-39. They were 3-21 in A10 play. 23, they were 8-40. 2024, they were 18-31. We're talking about a team that is at the bottom of the Atlantic 10 that has a kid throwing 102 miles an hour. That's baseball in 2025.
That is so crazy. And it's a great thing and a bad thing, right? Like we're talking about the arm issues. Like there you go.
There you go. But like,
it's also like St. Bonaventure throwing
Bonaventure. Bonaventure's not good. Like, I don't know if they're good this year. I have no idea. But like, just the last 3 years of records,
they can't be
St.
good
Bonaventure.
enough to,
like,
this
kid should be the Friday guy at LSU.
I wonder when's the last time a mid-major team that was like bottom of their conference had a dude thrown north of 100. I'm sure it happens here and there, but 102 is like a different beast.
I saw that and I was just flat out floored because like 102 got Riley Pint drafted top 5, got Tyler Kolek drafted second overall. And like now it's like, oh yeah, Bonaventure has a kid throwing 102. And I saw on Joe Doyle's big board, he's like 170.
Yeah, that was I saw that.
102 miles an hour.
Yeah, he said, no, he touched 102 today, number 187 on my big board. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah, that
where are we at?
As emblematic as anything. I think it's crazy. But again, kids should keep making contact more. Just figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out, man. Especially in A10 play. I mean, I'm thinking like it might have been 50 degrees and he was throwing 102. Like, come on, man. I feel bad for these kids. So, all right, that's what we got. Every link you need is in the episode description. I think we're doing Zips projections this week, and we're gonna have some fun with it, man. So, yeah, that's it. We'll talk to you guys on Wednesday.
Looking forward to it.